Yeah, we got a neat experience out of it. We'd love to have Shohei Ohtani out of it, but I think 29 teams are probably disappointed at this point in time. The process for us as an organization started probably 7 years ago with like Logan White and AC Krogi scouting him and AJ Preller scouting him. And there's a lot of history there. A lot of history we were hoping led to a level of connection that brought him to San Diego. But once we get past the initial pitch, the information packet we sent in, the opportunity to sit down, we spent 2 quality hours with him, and didn't end up making the connection, but like felt really good about what our team put together. There's definitely a lot of effort and energy in it. Probably 3 or 4 all-nighters in the mix there, trying to make sure we had everything lined up the way we wanted. And we have some incredibly valuable Japanese members of our organization: Hideo Nomo, Takashi Saito, Seiichiro Nakagaki. Those guys were a part of it, and they're incredibly valued people, and I thought they were a huge value add there. We would have loved to have come away with it, but for us it's reboot, move forward, and keep going.
Without revealing too much, what were some of the selling points?
I think there's a lot of reasons to feel like the fit was right. I think we're always up against that concept of he's DH'd and pitched over the last couple of years when he's had his success. That was something we had no ability to offer him being a National League club, so it was always kind of working against us in that regard. We felt like the timeline fit was right, the opportunity was there to pitch and play a position. I would assume that everybody made a very convincing pitch. A lot of really intelligent organizations working on the same thing, and only one's coming away with the prize.
Do you think that gives you confidence next year if there's another Japanese player that wants to go over that you've gone through this process at that level?
I think we're positioned to support Japanese players in a way other organizations aren't. Those guys that I mentioned are like legends in Japan and legends here too. And they're tremendous people. Takashi Saito jumps off the page. I mean, like, you can look at spring training and he's shining shoes for players. Like, this guy's like an impressive man. I love the guy to death, and Nomo's Nomo. So I think we're positioned well to help them. I don't think another process like what went down with Ohtani is going to go down again in the future. I think dollars are going to be a big selling point in the future. This was one of those times where dollars were kind of out the window, and it was more of connection than anything else. So I think that was a unique process. I know we'll continue to be active players in that market, though.
New third baseman, starting pitcher. What can you tell us about where they might fit in the process?
Yeah, I think there's real excitement bringing Brian Mitchell in. He's a guy that we've believed in for a few years. I've heard our scouts and our front office talk about him for a few years now. And he's a guy that got caught on that interstate between Scranton and New York and didn't get consistent opportunity. Pitched out of the bullpen, pitched in a starter's role every now and again, and they were never able to give him the consistent opportunity with which we think he'll thrive in. So he's going to come over here. He's going to pitch in the rotation for us. He's going to get real chance to pitch, and I think sometimes the change of scenery, going from New York to San Diego, changes things. And also just, hey man, there's belief in you here, and we're going to run you out there and give you an opportunity. So we see him being in the rotation. We think his stuff plays there. Talking to him yesterday, he was very excited to be a Padre and very excited for the opportunity that looks like it's out in front of him. And then in Chase Headley's case, like, bringing a guy back to San Diego, had a lot of success there. And I think a lot of people have made this out to be like the Brian Mitchell acquisition, which was a huge part of it. Chase Headley would have had the highest on-base percentage on our team last year. It's like something we value to a high degree. He had a very solid offensive season. He had the second highest OPS on our team last year. So he still brings a lot of things to the table. And my conversation with him yesterday was a pros pro conversation. Like, I'll do whatever I can to help the club, do whatever I can to help move young guys along. Happy to be back in San Diego. Loved my time there. It was really impressive. All the while understanding that we have quite a few third basemen currently and quite a few opportunities to see how that unfolds over the next few weeks. But assuming he is in a Padre uniform, like, I'm genuinely excited to have him, and I think AJ's been very forthright with him, and we've been very forthright that, like, things will probably shake out here over the next few weeks, and we'll figure what our roster looks like a little bit more.
And you speak of those third basemen. Solarte, his strongest defensive position is third. Obviously, played some second, played some short. How do you see his role, moving forward into 2018?
Yeah, he brings like true positional versatility for us, especially between second and third base. And being the type of guy he is, his willingness to embrace that for me as a manager is always very comforting. So I never had anything drawn up the day before. Hey, you're going to play third tomorrow, you can play second the next day. He bounced around willingly and wantingly. He did a great job at shortstop, considering like his limited exposure there. He actually, I think if you look at some metrics, they're going to shock you of the way he played at that position. So that versatility is huge for us because we don't have most of our other pieces are kind of like Carlos Asuaje's locked in at second base. Spangenberg could bounce from third to second and out to left, but kind of the other guys are limited. Christian Villanueva is going to play third base when he plays. Chase Headley's going to play third, might bounce to first, but we're big fans of Soli. Have been for a long time. It's a real at-bat from the left-hand side. He handles velo, hits the ball all over the park, comes with a smile and energy to the ballpark, part of the pulse of our team. So we value him highly. And I foresee him being a key contributor going into next year right now.
And when you said Asuaje is locked into second, by that do you mean that it's his job to lose, or that's the only position you're comfortable playing in?
I think that's his position. I wouldn't say at this point in time that it's anybody's position to lose. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. I think we're trying to create a culture of belief in our players, but also a culture of competition. I think guys like push each other to be great, and he'll be right in the mix with that. There's a young guy in Luis Urias who's breathing down his neck right now to get to the big leagues. That plays second base as well and plays some short. You got Spangenberg can bounce over there, Solarte can bounce over there. It's probably a muddy picture right now, trying to figure out how our roster fits together. But I think where we're at right now is bring in as much talent as you possibly can, and we'll sort it out.
Hunter Renfroe had some real high ups and some real low downs. Came demoted to AAA at one point. What was just your overall assessment of his rookie season, and what do you need to see from him moving into 2018?
I think as a coaching staff, like one of the things you really want to do with your players is you want to raise awareness and kind of transfer ownership, raise awareness of like what you want your players to do, and then transfer ownership to them to actually get it done. You don't get to stand in the box and create plate discipline for a guy, but you can raise awareness on how much you value that. That move at that time of the year to send him down was like an attempt to raise awareness. Like, we believe in this enough that, hey, go down to the minor leagues, let's work on plate discipline, let's work on defense in the outfield. It's ludicrous pop. I mean, it's ability to leave the ballpark anywhere you want. It's unbelievable arm strength, tons of athleticism. The ceiling is still incredibly high. To get to that ceiling, plate discipline has to be a huge part of his growth, and I think we raised that awareness last year. I think he got that message, and I saw some market improvement and like some key indicators that say like he's moving in the right direction. I think those things are exciting for us. He's going to be challenged for that position. I mean, that's just the reality of where we are right now. AJ's always going to be opportunistic in acquiring more talent, but you got Jose Perella, who was great in the outfield. Alex Dickerson, who to me was our most professional at bat 2 years ago, missed all of last year. He's going to be coming back. Franchi Cordero's dominating in the Dominican Winter League right now. There's going to be real competition out there, and I think we all value Hunter highly. And go out there and fight, man.
To follow up, Renfroe's scouting reports defensively were always glowing throughout his minor league career. Hasn't translated to the majors. Where have you seen the issues with him defensively?
I locked in and first step. Like how passionate is your pre-pitch? How involved are you in every pitch? When he has that high level of focus, he's great out there. I think we brought Skip Schumacher onto the staff this year, and if I know anything about Skip, he's going to be passionate about guys doing that and doing that religiously. And you hope, like what I said earlier, you raise awareness of this is important. If he's locked in and he's taking a quick first step because he's locked in, he's going to defend the position really well. I think sometimes he wants to show you the raw tool a lot, which is the arm. It's fun to watch when a guy hits a ball down the first baseline. He catches it, spins, and fires to second base, unlike pretty much any other big leaguer in the game. That's fun, but the real difference is made in how locked in are you on every pitch and how good is your first step on every pitch, and that's definitely going to be the focal point for him.
Yeah, Andy, players in this generation are bigger, physically they're bigger and stronger than in previous generations.
Bigger than me?
Most of them are. You're in the previous generation. The players are bigger and stronger, but given all the information, do you think modern day players also understand the game better than previous generations? Or is that a false thought?
I think they probably understand the analytical dialogue better than the previous generation. The vernacular of the day has changed. The intricacies of the game sometimes are swept away, and guys don't pay as much of attention to the fine details that mattered to winning baseball games. They can probably talk about launch angle, exit velo, what your runs created are in a way that the previous generation couldn't. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're more educated in how to execute in a key moment in the game. So I think it's different. They're definitely bigger, faster, stronger. There's no doubt about that. I think that's just the natural progression of sports in general. And there's a ton of talent there. But there was real dialogue when I was coming up as to how you executed under pressure in key situations, and that's been probably drowned out a little bit by the technical noise of how to create a launch angle with your swing. And so that's kind of where the focus has changed. I think there's probably a great balance to strike there, and we try to strike it just like every organization does.
Yeah, related thing real quick is 4 years ago, actually 3 years ago, we were out here talking about how offense had created in baseball, and people were talking about how speed was going to become a big part of the game, and instead it's gone in the opposite direction with power. You know, like, why do you think that happened, and what role does speed play in today's game?
Speed's a valuable commodity in the game. The power has changed the way the game's played. I think a lot of it, too, is just the raw power of pitching velocity. Where we choose to attack hitters now, it is much easier to elevate fastballs at the top of the strike zone, which more teams are going to attacking guys there because there's a higher probability of swing and miss up there. So now you're attacking in a region that if you make a mistake, it's going to be more likely to be a home run. So I think that's kind of changed. As far as like speed, we try to take advantage of it. I think we have some from a skill set perspective that we can utilize. But the reality is when Stanton or Judge hit the ball out of the ballpark, they don't really need to be very fast. Like our guys might be able to draw a walk, steal second. It's a lot easier just to jack the ball sometimes the way it is today.
Will Myers has spoken about his preference for first base in the event that he's asked to move to the outfield. What challenges do you see for him there, and how do you think you guys can handle it?
Yeah, I think the one thing I've learned about Will is like he wants to win, and that's been refreshing in dialogue we've had through the offseason, a willingness to help us engage whoever we're targeting in order to bring more talent into the organization, and a willingness to move to accommodate that talent if it gives us a better shot at winning. That's when your big-time player is willing to be that type of a guy, it sets a real good cultural tone for everybody. So it's really appreciated he's that way. And I think the other thing about Will is like he takes to new challenges very well. I think he took to the first base challenge really well 2 years ago. I think like if he's being honest, which he's incredibly honest and transparent, so I don't feel bad saying this, he probably grew a little bored with the challenge last year. Hey, I did this, I dominated first base, lost a measure of focus in it and attention to detail that he needs to ratchet back up. I think if we asked him to move to an outfield position, the newness of moving back out there and the way he's challenged by Skip, he'd embrace that and grow from that. He's incredibly athletic. He'd be great out there.
Would you have a preference for either corner that he plays?
Probably predicated on our roster, it's too muddy waters right now to really understand where he would be best. It's the beauty of it. I have to act like I have an answer for you guys in the middle of December, but I really don't have to have an answer until much later. So we'll pretend to have it right now, but one or the other, not center though.
Three teams ahead of you all qualified for the playoffs in your division. Talk about the challenge of trying to leapfrog with the three teams in front of you that all qualified for the postseason.
And that other team's won like 3 World Series in the last 7 years or something. So yeah, that team's not bad either, and they're retooling aggressively as well. I think I don't know this for a fact, I'll let you guys do this, but I'm guessing we played more games against playoff teams than the other team in baseball did last year. When you got 3 of them in your division, I'm pretty sure that that's probably the case. I think we're probably right up there with wins against playoff teams last year, so we got to test ourselves against the best competition in the game, which is exciting when you're trying to build something. And I think just like the way you're wired as a competitor, you want the best in your division. Like you want to unseat them. We have to get better. We have to execute at a higher clip. We have to continue to bring in more talent. We have to raise the culture of expectation as an organization to catch up to those guys. But for me, like, I love it. Like all 3 of them are legit teams. The other one's a legit team. So you want your guys to be wired that way to love that.
When you guys were pursuing Ohtani, how concerning, if at all, was the elbow condition?
I'd love to really dive into that. I don't feel it's great to talk about the medicals of other teams. We were excited about Ohtani at whatever he came in and was for us. We were very excited about him and weren't particularly concerned of anything he had been through in the short term.
Would you have been prepared to do a 6-man rotation because of his Japanese history? And how do you feel in general about that idea have this guy's throwing fewer innings, spreading it around. Is a six-man rotation something we can see this game?
Yeah, I think so. Like the unique thing he provided a club was the opportunity to have a bat and a six-man rotation, so you weren't hampered by roster constraints. So he was very unique in making that easier to do and not handcuffing a manager. Most of our young guys that we're going to rely on to be big-time starters for us in the future, they're coming up in a six-man rotation system. And if we introduced it in September last year, which is probably common for a lot of clubs that aren't in contention to do that, if there's not a disparity between your 1 and 6 at the level there is with most teams, like there's reason to do it because the rest is probably really good for guys. I thought he would have fit very well with our plan to do that, and he would have made it easier to actually do that. As time unfolds, I think we'll definitely explore that possibility of utilizing a lot of these young arms in a six-man rotation. Yeah, I think we're without him. Even we were honest in that dialogue with him that this is something we've discussed. Regardless of you weren't necessarily the impetus for wanting to do this, but we think that Cal Quantrill and Joey Lucchesi and Eric Lauer and Jacob Nix and that first wave of talent, Enio De Los Santos, those guys coming up. It would serve them well early in their career to be in that type of environment if we can pull it off.
Do you think the game will get to that? I mean, we used to be 4 to 5 for a long time. Do you think we'll get to 6?
It's tough on a 25-man roster, and that's where it's just you're handcuffed in a large degree based on if a guy gives you 3 innings one night and you blow through your bullpen and you need another arm and you're already playing with a short bench and you've got to go find that other piece that allows you to keep a six-man rotation, you have to basically run that train between your AAA club and your big league club very aggressively to pull that off. So you need organizational depth. And I think you look at the clubs that are contending in the postseason, like the Dodgers we stared at a lot. They've had a ton of organizational depth, so they could run that train in a way that we couldn't because our drop-off was fairly substantial.
And there's been an influx of young guys, 21, 22, who've had a pretty good run. When you have young guys, we might see the stats, but you see body language every day. You see when things aren't going well. Can you just talk a little bit about the expectation? The bar seems to be raised. If you're a young guy, you should be able to play. They're really rare. And when you see the numbers and the guys stuff them a little bit, you see maybe how it takes a toll on a guy who's probably had success his whole life.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's based on the internal wiring of the individual. Like Manny Margot, very young in the big leagues this year. Manny could go against the best in the world every single night, and he could get beat. He's going to be fine the next day. He's just wired right. He's wired to hey, you can knock me down, but I'm coming back. I'm going to keep coming. And when you know the individual, you know if they're really wired correctly to be able to endure that. And if they're not, you probably have to be a little bit more protective and play them a little bit slower otherwise. We do think we have a couple of young position players coming at the upper levels of our minor leagues now that are wired that way. That they're not just going to be okay with the challenge, they're actually going to thrive because of the challenge. So it comes down to me to knowing your individuals, knowing your players, and reading their body language as they go through it. Because through the course of the season, if you're paying attention as a manager, I need to talk to that guy right now. He needs an arm around him. He needs a conversation. When I think of my staff, Glenn Hoffman's unbelievable at it. He has such a good radar for. I've seen young guys struggle since the 1980s when I was managing in the big leagues, and this guy needs a conversation. And he has a way of putting an arm around the guy and building him up and making him feel 10 feet tall. Darren Balsley does that very well. So your staff has to kind of have their antenna up to read those guys, especially young guys, and help them.
What about a veteran guy? Are you guys the perfect team? You want him to be an ability to help you win games, but do you also see the value in having that 1 or 2 guys who is not a coach? It's that guy.
Tremendous value. We've been, for the last year, predominantly a staff-driven culture. A lot of that's built because of our roster, where other teams have gone out and added the Daniel Descalzos of the world or the Chase Utleys of the world. We're plucking young Rule 5 guys because we're in talent acquisition mode, and those guys coming in have huge value to us in the future. But that also means Chase Utley or Daniel Descalzo or Skip Schumacher when he was playing, those guys aren't on your bench to kind of foster the type of discussion that buoys young guys. So I think we're transitioning away from being in that mode into, okay, now we're going to have some guys we can really rely on to build up our young guys, and we can layer in some free agents that are going to partner with the staff in building the culture, and then you just pass ownership over to them. We just quite haven't been in that spot yet. Love the guys we have. We just lack the experience. I think we put Chase Headley on the roster now. He literally has twice as much big league experience as anybody on our roster. There's value in that. There's value in the type of person he is when he immediately, after playing for 10 years in the big league, says, you tell me how I can help you guys. Like, that's on his radar. When you trade for Brian Mitchell, that's not on Brian Mitchell's radar. His radar is like, I got to establish myself. And that's right. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's huge value in the guy coming over going, what about your other 24 guys? What can I do to add value? And so me as a manager, I'm hungry for those type of players. That makes my job like considerably easier and changes kind of the direction of us. So I think we're excited about him, and we're excited about any other veteran we choose to layer in this offseason that makes that easier.
And in 2016, Ohtani was batting in your spring training camp, and I know a lot of your staff got to watch him hit, and were pretty impressed. Did you get to see him, and did you get any reports from that spring?
Yeah, the Fighters had 2 springs with us in Peoria. The second one, nobody went down to see really anything. It's my understanding he was hurt and wasn't even participating. I saw him the previous year. It takes 2 seconds to see the pop. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be effusive in praise of another team's player right now, but I leaned on the cage and saw him hit. Wasn't having conversations with him on the field or anything, but it's real pop.
He's going to play.
He's going to play. And he's like, you would assume there's going to be a learning curve as there will anybody else. I went to Japan. I was attacked differently as a hitter over there than I was here in the States. There's differences, and I'm sure it'll take him a while to acclimate, but that'll be to the Angels how they help them through that process.
Opportunities are there going to be for Jose Morella with Dickerson coming back, Will maybe moving in the outfield, some of the other depth that you have there?
Based on what he did last year, I'm a fool if I don't find a way to get him opportunity. He was our most consistent offensive performer, and he plays with passion and energy, and I think, for the most part, right around the time he came up or slightly thereafter, we played 500 ball the rest of the year. Now, that's not like, ooh, look at us, we're playing 500 ball. It's not clearly the goal. But from a team that started 15-30 before he showed up to the team we were after him, I think his energy and his skill kind of transformed who we were. So, he has some positional versatility. His skill is with the bat on the offensive side of the game, but his desire to work hard, it's really unparalleled. Like, he gets after it on defense. So if it's third base, if it's second base, if it's left field, if it's right field, wherever that spot ends up being for him, like, I'm certain he's going to work his tail off to be as good as he can be, and I have a ton of confidence in the bat for him. So he's a hard guy not to love when you watch him play the game, and I love cheering for the guys that kind of like didn't get the opportunity and weren't the marquee prospects, and then you look up and like, this guy's turned himself into a real big leaguer, and he fits that description.
And you can see back a while ago, and I don't know how far back, take starters who didn't look like they were going to be starters in the major leagues and put them in the bullpen. Bullpen prices have gone up, especially when the toss matches. Do you think there's a chance that you might see a little more of that? We've already got them. We should know them better than anybody else. When we put them in the pen at a controllable number and see if we can have success that way.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at the prices guys are going off the board for in the free agent market right now, for relievers, it's as high as I ever remember seeing it. When it's not like the marquee closer name, these guys are getting paid and paid very well. We have a host of internal options within the organization that are starters at the AA level that could easily transition to the bullpen. You look at Iniel De Los Santos, and he's throwing 98 as a starter, and if you check our prospect list, like, this guy's down the list, but a lot of other places he'd be at the top of their list. So, you've got the Cal Quantrells and the Joey Lucchese's and the Eric Lauers, and probably like look at those guys to start, but if they fall off, one of them turns into Brad Hand, who is a converted starter. That's a great problem to have, and I think we're going to have enough numbers. I think AJ and the scouting department have been unbelievable in like acquiring depth at the pitching position that I would assume in very short order organizations are going to start recognizing they got a lot of real arms over there, and not a lot of teams can say that. So we'll convert those guys, and I'm certain that there'll be some of those guys we trade eventually too to help us get the position player pieces we need.
Organization. Is there a person or two that's responsible for maybe saying now's the time to take that guy from the starter's role and let's find out if he can actually come out of the pen?
Yeah, I think we're by nature a very collaborative organization. So, Mark Pryor's our pitching coordinator, has a hand in it. Sam Gainey is our farm director. AJ, his by nature is to talk to absolutely everybody around the periphery of it and like ask them their opinion and try to consolidate those opinions into action. So I tend to be a part of those conversations as well, which I enjoy, not from a need to make the decision perspective, but it's fun to be a part of those because they're a big part of our future. So I think it's a collaborative process with kind of those guys spearheading it.
You probably heard the term prestige value pretty recently. I know you can't get into specifics with potential targets, but do you think one or two players who've been there, done that, can elevate an entire clubhouse, have a tangible effect on a team winning this game?
Yeah, I think so, and it can happen from that person being your marquee player, that person being a peripheral starter, or that person being a bench guy. You can find that value of guys who have been there and done that, and they can fit in different spots on your team. So you're not necessarily relegated to it having to be your marquee player, your number one player, but those guys that have been there and done that, I think just players in general tend to listen to that guy. And as much as you want to pretend like you connect with everybody as a manager of a club, they like listening to their peers more than they like listening to an authoritative voice sometimes. So those peers can be a huge asset in like establishing culture and direction. And I think we'll continue to kind of look through the market to find out who fits those descriptions and recognize that layering those guys in is going to add value to the Austin Hedges and the Manny Margaux of our club.
Hedges is a guy who his entire life has been a great defender, not sure about the bat. He showed some pop last year, but it was 214 with a 260 something on base. How much better do you think he can realistically become offensively?
First thing you look at when you ask that question is, how's this guy wired? Like, is he wired to want to improve? And there's probably only a handful of guys in the game that are outworking Austin Hedges right now. There's not many, so he's wired to work. He's hungry to get better. I think as he continues to become more cerebral with how he's attacking hitters, he's going to get a better understanding of how he's being attacked. I think that education will only serve him well. There's real pop in the bat. I can see 25 home runs coming out of him. They're not small home runs when he hits them. It's just a matter of how well he's seeing the baseball, and I think you get down into mechanically where he was last year. It's kind of a two-part swing with substantial head movement, which limited his ability to read pitches. I think Matt Stairs will be working hard to kind of smooth that out with him and hopefully put him in a position to be really successful in seeing the baseball. If he loads and reads the ball, he's going to hit. If he's moving to try to read the ball, it's not a good combo for him, and that's where some of the chase and strikeouts come from. But I think Austin's going to keep getting better and better, and couldn't be more excited about having him.
It's been a little bit of a tricky kind of roster situation last few days with all the Rule 5 guys. Gary, do you enjoy kind of the challenges of bringing some of those guys along and making them fit in a major league environment?
Yeah, everybody's unique, so each Rule 5 guy presents a unique challenge. I think you look up, and Luis Perdomo's been in our rotation for 2 years now. I look at Luis Torrens last year and can see that guy being a frontline catcher in the big leagues. Not going to happen next year, but he's playing really well in Venezuela right now. He had some confidence in himself, and there's some of the Rule 5 guys who will show up and they're wide-eyed and a little bit apprehensive about the huge change in environment. So everybody's wired different, but I think at the end of it, we've made 7 picks in my 2 years managing. I think I'm the only manager that stays around for the Rule 5 draft because that was how half my team was formed over the last couple of years. I think we're migrating away from that pattern of behavior. Not saying we're not going to participate or are going to participate, but I don't see us popping 4 names. I think we're getting roster constraints that make that really hard to do, which is a good problem. That's people are going to start talking about our guys in the Rule 5 rather than us taking everybody else's guys. But I think the guys we've brought back all have value, and it makes unique challenges for a manager. And I think some of the issue of you look at run differentials for us last year. We won 71 games. Our run differential probably said we should have won less, but a lot of that's predicated on young guys playing from A ball and rookie ball jumping to the big leagues, and it's a heck of a learning curve. But I think the experience serves them all well.
You mentioned Matt Stairs. The philosophy that you want him to bring, the differences that you'd like to see him as far as hitting instructor and the approach. Yeah,
I think fit is as important as anything when you hire a big league hitting coach, because reality is the vast majority of them command the knowledge of the swing. He obviously has the experience, but fit in that I'm not necessarily giving him the philosophy to follow, but his philosophy resonates with me, and it lines up perfectly with what we're trying to do. He wants to develop stubborn hitters that don't come off the pitch they're looking for, and pass the baton well, are willing to take the walk and willing to drive the ball gap to gap. It's not rocket science, but there's a simplicity in the way he communicates that message that resonated with me, and I think will resonate well with our players. And there's also the understanding, guy did it for 19 years. It's pretty impressive. He was a big leaguer for 19 seasons, and I think that cachet probably helps a little bit to get guys to listen a little bit more. At the end of the day, it's the substance of a man that matters more than the experience of a man, and he's got both of those, so those are good things to check the boxes of.
How does his personality, Skip's personality, how's that going to mesh with your coaching staff?
I think tremendously well. I've been in a 2-year process of courting Skip Schumacher to be on the Major League staff. It's probably one of my best recruiting jobs at this point in time. It involved the whole family to get him in. But just having him in spring training as a player when I first took over, you realize what everybody says about him is true. Every player respects him. 1, because he's authentic, 2, because he's honest, and 3, because he knows what the heck he's talking about. And I think he's going to be really adept at improving our outfielders, really adept at helping build a culture of hard work, and really adept at attention to detail on the base paths. And I feel great about that, and I kind of just praise Stairsy a little bit too. I think he's going to fit in nice. And we also brought Josh Johnson in to help out with the infielders. You're going to hear him in the clubhouse. We look for some energy, and Josh is going to bring a ton of energy. We brought a guy out of coaching in rookie ball, managing in rookie ball, and he comes with some real energy, and he's going to make you smile. And I think through the dog days this summer, he's going to be a fun guy to be out on the field working with.
Andy, you've referenced Margot a few times, but also mentioned there's a lot of moving pieces. Is he the one guy, maybe the only guy along with Hedges you can say, I know he'll be at this spot my starting lineup on opening day?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about him being in center field for us. I feel good about Austin being behind the plate. We brought signed a minor league free agent, Rafi Lopez, to come in and compete with Rocky Gale and maybe some other people in the catcher's mix. But I think Rafi Lopez is actually a really intriguing guy to me, too. If you've watched his progression over the last couple of years, he sees the baseball, he receives well, he wins the bottom of the strike zone well, and he's got real pop. So a left-handed bat that pairs with Hedges might be nice. But I feel pretty good first day of the season saying, man, he'll be out in center and Austin will be behind the plate. Those are good things to have established. And then after that, your guess is probably as good as mine right now.